Hey guys, today I'm going to be reviewing a Linux distribution that I really don't know anything about. I just recently came across it on the distrowatch.com page and I thought, hey, why not? That Linux distribution is Redcore Linux. Redcore Linux is Gentoo-based, and I love Gentoo, so I really like installing Gentoo-based distros, see what they're about, because it's actually quite a challenge. Most of these Gentoo-based distros are trying to make Gentoo into a more user-friendly, easier to install, easier to live in operating system than what mainline Gentoo really is. Just the install process for Gentoo is a real beast. Not necessarily difficult, but very, very time consuming. The install process for Gentoo takes hours or days in some cases to wait for all the software to compile. You're building everything from source basically, where these Gentoo-based distros like Sabian that I reviewed recently, or Redcore Linux that I'm reviewing today, they have pre-built binaries, they have their own repos. The install process should be much smoother, much quicker. Now, Redcore Linux, this is Redcore Linux 17.10. They use the LXQT desktop environment. They are based in Romania. The country of origin for this distro is Romania, and this is a continuation of a now defunct Linux distribution called Kogayan Linux. I never heard of Kogayan Linux before, so that's a new one to me, but it's no longer being developed. I guess that project shut down, and it is continuing now as Redcore Linux. So I'm going to download the ISO, and then I'm going to install this inside VirtualBox. I'll be right back. Okay guys, so downloaded the ISO, and looks like it's going to boot us into a live environment. Okay, still waiting. Alright, so welcome to localhost.local domain. Okay, that's interesting. It's a login screen, but how are we going to log in, because we haven't installed anything? Okay. To log in, I just took a guess and entered root as the username and root as the password. That actually was a pretty good guess because it got us into the LXQT live desktop here. And let's see if I can get to an installer. So I'm going to go to the menu down here. I'm going to go to System Tools. I would assume the installer would be in here. Calamares. Calamares is the system installer. Alright. Since there is not enough drive space, at least 20 gigabytes is required. So I created a 15 gig virtual machine here to install this on, because I assumed it would be more than enough for any distro really. I've never had anything take more than really 10 or 12 gigs after install, so 15 is usually plenty of space. Asking for 20 gigs, especially when you're installing the LXQT desktop environment, and that's kind of crazy. But let me shut this down. I'll create a new virtual machine and give it 20 gigs of hard drive space, and I'll start the install again. Okay guys, I created a new virtual machine and gave it 20 gigs of hard disk space, so we should be able to run through the installer now. I still think the installer, that warning about needing 20 gigs of space was way off base. The ISO that I downloaded for this LXQT version of Redcore Linux was only 2.7 gigs, so it's not going to need 20 gigs of hard disk space, but it is what it is. So I'm going to go ahead and run through the installer. Alright, English, we need the Central Time Zone. I don't know what Indiana, oh well, it's in the Central Time Zone. Let's test out the keyboard layout. English US is correct. I'm going to give Redcore Linux the entire 20 gig hard disk, or 21 gig hard drive that I created in this virtual machine. And I'm going to give it a simple username, a simple password. I'm not going to choose login automatically. I want it to ask me for a password when I log in. Use the same password for the administrator account. I will tick that on. That way the user password and the admin password are the same password. I don't have to remember two different passwords. Then our basically summary here is our location, keyboard, partition scheme correct. It all looks good. I'm going to click next. It's going to warn me it's about to install now, so it's actually about to write to the disk. It's going to format the drive, and away we go. Alright, this will probably run for about 5 or 10 minutes. I'll be back once the installer is done. Whoa, I've got an error. /dev/loop3 is already mounted on /temp/temp whatever. That's not good. Okay guys, so I had some problems with the installer. It took me about a half an hour to finally get that installer to run. When I did get it to run, it ran slow. It took probably about 25 minutes or so for it to run through the install. I couldn't run it in the LXQT live environment. I actually loaded up OpenBox, opened an Xterm in OpenBox, ran Calamares, the installer, from the terminal, and it did run inside an OpenBox session, but it wanted to hang at around 23%. All of a sudden, you know, it was going 0, it got to 23%, and it hung on 23% for a long time. It took about 15 minutes probably for it to move from 23% to like 26%. But once it got past that little bump in the road, then the installation proceeded just fine. So I'm going to restart the machine and check out our freshly installed Redcore Linux. Alright, so it's booting up. Let's see how long the boot up takes. Should be pretty fast now that we've actually installed Redcore Linux. Okay, so back to a login screen, and now I can actually type in the username I had chosen, which was Redcore. And the VirtualBox guest editions work out of the box. We get a full screen resolution here. Got quite a bit of notifications coming up. Alright. Now again, I've never heard of Redcore Linux until today. I know nothing about it. All I know is it's Gentoo-based. Being Gentoo-based, it's rolling release. Basically, it's, you know, Gentoo and an easy to install package. Very similar to Sabian in that regard. Sabian is very much Gentoo, but it's Gentoo with an easy install. So I'm going to go through the LXQT menu down here and see what programs they installed by default, especially since it told me I needed 20 gigs of hard drive space to install Redcore, which is a lot of hard drive space for a Linux distribution. So under accessories, we have Arc, which is our archive manager for zip, unzip, that sort of thing. We have the Compton compositor, you know, to add decorations to your windows, shadows and fading in, fading out sort of thing. Featherpad, not sure what Featherpad is. It looks like it is a text editor. A lightweight tabbed plain text editor based on Qt 5. Okay. So just a little simple, minimal text editor. We have our HP device manager. We have KCalc. That's an interesting choice because that's one of the KDE programs. It's a calculator program. But it's a Qt program too, and LXQT, the desktop environment we're using, uses the Qt toolkit too. So KeyPass, Notepad QQ, edit source code files. Okay, let me open that. I want to check that out. Pretty interesting here about Notepad QQ. Well, it really doesn't tell me much else about it. Back to accessories, we have the PC Man FM file manager, which is probably my favorite lightweight, minimal file manager, you know, for a graphical environment anyway. I really like PC Man FM. And we have Clipper, which is our clipboard. Under games, we have Play on Linux and Steam, both installed by default. So that's really cool. A lot of Linux distributions do not install Steam by default because it's not, you know, open source software. So a lot of them won't install it by default on their distro, just, you know, based on principle. Graphics, we have FontForge, we have the GNU image manipulation program, that is GIMP, people. It's strange that it's written the full name like that. Normally it just appears as GIMP in a menu. Inkscape, excellent vector graphics program. LX Image, we have MuPDF, which is a PDF program. Screenshot, which is your screenshot utility, of course. And Xsane, which is a scanner. Under Internet, we have FileZilla, which is a FTP program. That is kind of an odd choice to put on a ISO, because how many people really use FTP, you know, file transfer protocol? That's usually for like people managing web servers and such, you know, uploading files to a remote server. Conversation, which is a chat client. It's one of the KDE programs. QBitTorrent. We have Quite RSS, which is a RSS reader. I've never actually used Quite RS, but looks like your standard news feed reader. Cupzilla is the browser. Basically, it's a variation of Firefox. And then we have WMail is our mail client. And excuse me. Oh, I mentioned Cupzilla is based on Firefox. It's not based on Firefox. It's basically it's a web browser that was created built on the Qt toolkit. So everything here is going to be Qt, the LXQT desktop environment. So Office, we have LibreOffice, pretty much the entire LibreOffice suite installed by default. Very cool. We have QPDFView, which is another PDF program. Programming, we have Notepad QQ again, and Sandbox, where you can launch a sandbox shell for debugging. Under Redcore Linux, we have a category called Redcore Linux in the menu. We have download, I guess to download ISOs, Gentoo documentation, Get Live Help, Redcore documentation. We have the Redcore repos and the Redcore homepage. So that's pretty cool that they have that in the menu. Sound and video, we have the Cantata music player. We have GUVC View, which is a video viewer and capturer. You see this square that I'm currently in. On my main machine, I am running GUVC View. This is actually that program. K3B is also installed. That is KDE's disk burning utility. Fantastic disk burning utility. MPV media player. You know, your standard, you know, video player. We have Simple Screen Recorder. Simple Screen Recorder records your desktop basically. I actually am using it right now to record my desktop to make this video. We have TV Max. I'm not sure what that is. I've never heard of this program. Has a channel list. I guess we could watch TV on our desktop. That's kind of cool actually. I may have to check that program out later. VidCutter, which I'm assuming is a video editor, yeah. VLC, which is a fantastic multimedia player. Plays video, what most people use it for. Plays audio too. Works fine as a music player. Under System Tools, we have About LXQT. Tells us a little bit more about the LXQT desktop environment. We have AQEMU. We have Avahi. HTOP. HTOP is a system monitor that runs in the terminal. Really cool system monitor. Basically shows you all the processes running on the computer right now. ISO Writer, K3B, so we have some more disk burning stuff. KDE Partition Manager, Manage Printing, QPS, which is the Qt application to display and manage running processes. Okay. Qt terminal is our terminal of choice here. Just a standard terminal emulator, lightweight. And we have the Sisyphus GUI. That is their package manager. Okay. This is actually kind of what I was hoping to find, because I have no idea what they're using for a package manager here. Alright, so this looks like your standard package manager graphical interface. You know, basically listing all the programs that are, I guess, in the repos. You do have a search bar here, so we could search for something. Say I wanted to install the GNOME desktop environment. I could type GNOME in the search, and I do have some options. I have Gentoo-based. Okay, so yeah, it's interesting. And as I mentioned, Redcore does, you know, package binaries for all this. This is not building stuff from source. No, you know, long time spent compiling stuff like you might have to do in Gentoo. So that's really cool. Now, I probably wouldn't use the GUI package manager much. You know, I'm more of a terminal kind of guy, so let me see how things work in the terminal for installing packages. Alright, so I've opened a terminal. I need to be the root user, of course, to install anything. So I'm going to type SU for super user. And then it's going to ask me for my system administrator password. And then their package manager is called Sisyphus. It's kind of a strange name, but Sisyphus install, and then I'm going to pick a package to install something I would assume they would have. How about the Ranger file manager, which is a terminal-based file manager. Why is this hanging? Not a good sign. Okay. There are no binary packages to satisfy Ranger, so there's no Redcore Linux binary for it. So it was searching for something from Gentoo for Ranger, and I got nothing. Let me try a different package. How about Firefox? Everyone's got Firefox, right? So I'm not very encouraged at how this hangs when you try to install one program, and it's taking several seconds to go out there and determine if Firefox is actually in their repos or not. Okay, but it looks like it did find it, so yes. Let's see how long the install for Firefox takes. One of my big criticisms of Sabian when I reviewed it, another Gentoo-based distribution, was how bad the package manager was. Just everything for an install, for system updates and upgrades, was very, very slow in Sabian. Other than that, I love Sabian. It's just the package manager, you know, just very, very slow. Way too slow. I could never use it on my primary machines, my desktops, my laptops at home. And I'm hoping for a little bit better package management here in Redcore Linux, but so far I'm really not that encouraged if it takes this long to install one program, because it's telling me I can estimate, let's see, ETA 8 minutes 36 seconds. Oh, well, let's drop down to under 4 minutes now to install Firefox. That's still not great time to install Firefox. I mean, if I was installing Firefox, you know, using the apt package manager in Debian or Ubuntu, or the Pacman package manager in Arch, you know, I wouldn't expect, you know, an install of Firefox to take longer than a minute. Under a minute, well under a minute. So, and I'm still waiting for Firefox to install. It's been running for, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes here. But, okay, and it's finished. that's going to conclude my review of Redcore Linux, though. Basically, it's, you know, Gentoo with an easier installer, although I will say that Redcore's installer did have some bugs. It broke a couple of times on me. It took me several tries to finally get the installer to complete. So I give the installer kind of a fail, at least on the snapshot that I'm running here today. Once I actually got it installed, you know, it's really nice. LXQT desktop environment. You know, very nice desktop, easy to use. The default programs are well thought out. I mean, you have a complete suite of software here. You could get some work done here in Redcore Linux, so I like that. I'm not sure if I'm going to be crazy about that Sisyphus package manager, but we'll see. All in all, though, I'd give Redcore Linux a thumbs up. Peace, guys.